Well, welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
I'm Chris Clements.
So today it's we'll set the context because it is important from a timing perspective. What is the date today? It's the 21st. It's October 21st. A few months ago.
Happy fall to everybody.
Yeah, happy fall. Oh yeah, it's today
fall?
or tomorrow.
Today, yeah, whatever.
I don't know.
I mean, it's nice out.
It is nice out. It's beautiful.
It's not 110 anymore.
If you're not in
God.
Phoenix, I'm sorry because
Yeah.
it's beautiful. But the reason we usually don't do the specific dates, but because of what's going on in Washington, this is harking back to a point that you made a number of months ago.
It was a number of months ago.
A number of months ago, you talked about how you thought there was a chance that Senator Manchin from West Virginia might leave the Democrat Party.
I did. I made a very stark and interesting prediction that things could get so bad within whatever process they would go to in the fall budget, whether it's budget reconciliation or we didn't really know where we would be right now. To be honest with you, we had no idea what
Nobody knew.
Nobody knew. There was sort of a thinking that we would get to a loggerhead because of just the numbers you have in the Senate, the numbers you have in the House, and it's a slim majority. And as ambitious as the programs were that they're trying to put through, specifically the Democratic majority, that it would have to be the perfect game. It would have to be the perfect thing.
Well, there's no room for error. When it's a 50-50 Senate and the tying vote or the tiebreaker vote is Kamala Harris, vice president, they have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And they haven't been. It's been a huge challenge, in part because you've got Pelosi who has AOC and the squad and the progressives in the House really pulling them to the left. And then you've Joe Biden, who has historically been a little bit less progressive, but now acting way more progressive. And then you've got Manchin and our home state senator, Kirsten Sinema, saying, wait a minute, we don't know that we like this. So the news broke yesterday that this came from Mother Jones, that Manchin had been in discussions with his team about an exit strategy of the Democratic Party. Yeah. And even it was what Korn, the reporter, I'll get his first name, Korn reported that is pretty specific reporting about he would resign his position in Democratic leadership, wait a week to see what happens, and then declare himself
an independent,
American independent. Drop the Democratic registration on his voter ID or voter registration. What was left unknown was whether he'd caucus with the Democrats like Angus King from Maine does, or if he would caucus with the
Bernie
Republicans.
Sanders.
And
Bernie Sanders is still a self-described independent. Who's head of the budget committee in the Senate.
That's right.
And that is actually what is pushing this sort of reporting right now, and that is Bernie Sanders over the weekend dropped an op-ed in West Virginia, decrying the actions or the non-actions of Senator Manchin, and that went over like a lead balloon.
Yeah, called him out by name.
Both with the senator and with the constituency in West Virginia.
Right.
That maybe Bernie Sanders hasn't done the math, but Trump won by like 60% or something crazy. So
Bernie's definitely not. It's definitely not Bernie's audience.
So if you're a constituent of Senator Manchin, you're actually pushing him in the opposite direction, not to vote for this bill, not to vote for tax increases, not to vote for an expansion of the welfare state. And so what if you're Joe Manchin? What exactly are you going to do? Are you going to buck your party, continue to be a force, derided and just put, they're putting a lot of pressure on him, both in his state and in the Senate. So what's he going to do? He doesn't have a lot of choices.
Right.
I would imagine that he's willing to let this bill die. And he gets in a much better position, I think, from a position of power if he switches and just says, I'm killing the bill. I'm going to caucus with the Republicans, and now you have nothing.
Right.
Then the whole thing blows up. And he saves the republic. Now that's pie in the sky stuff. Who knows if that'll happen? But it's interesting that this reporting's happening now.
Right. There was speculation this morning was it leaked to hurt Manchin? Was it leaked to help Manchin? There's opposing.
Oh, I think Manchin leaked it. I would imagine from a strategic standpoint, he would have had to have leaked it after this weekend.
I think it strengthens his position. I think because it sends a shot across the bow.
You can either get something or nothing.
Yeah.
Which do you want?
Not only something or nothing. It's not only nothing. It's or you lose control of the Senate.
You lose control of the Senate like next week.
Yeah, because all of a sudden it's now 51-49.
Yeah,
and Kamala Harris doesn't matter anymore.
Well, but it begs the question. Also, I mean, everyone talked about this a lot on this podcast, but everyone keeps talking about it's Manchin and Sinema. Sinema's against the tax increases, which is very smart on her part because she comes from a very low tax, low regulatory state. She can count. She knows that if she votes for a huge tax increase, it's going to impact her election.
No question.
No question. Where's Mark Kelly? We don't know. He's hiding somewhere. He might be in Houston. He might be in Tucson. We don't know.
He might be on a spaceship.
He might be on a spaceship. He might be lost. We don't know where Mark Kelly is. Mark Kelly, where are you?
Phone home.
Where are you?
Mark Kelly, please let us know.
Hello. But that's the other point is that you have these other senators who are up for election in a year's time who probably don't want to vote for this bill either. Well, despite the smoke and mirrors of reconciliation, which that's all it is. Right now, all they're doing is when they say, "Oh, we're going to pare it down from 3.5 million to 1.5 million or 1.9 trillion," they're just playing with numbers. It's still a 3.5 to $5 trillion bill,
right?
Because the policies in there still dictate that cost. The policies they're pursuing. And David Schweikert has been, Congressman David Schweikert, we've had on the show, has been very forthright about this in all his recent interviews. Like, don't buy into the number, buy into the policy. Right. Look at what they're proposing. If those policies pass, you can't get rid of them.
Well, let's just step back for a second. It's still a significant amount of money when even if Bernie's claim that it was $6 trillion. Compromise down to 3.5.
We've compromised.
If that gets to $2 trillion, let's say it's 1.5. So you've got the infrastructure bill, the hard infrastructure bill, which is 1.2,
which is a win.
Yeah,
which is done. Which
they should just pass and go home.
A lot of the moderate Democrats are saying, "Why are you not taking the win?"
Right. So, but to finish my point, the 1.2 of infrastructure, let's say they negotiate the reconciliation to 1.5. So now you've got $3 trillion on top of the $2 trillion on the pandemic relief. So it's still $5 trillion.
Which hasn't been spent.
Well, yeah.
At all. Really.
And so David's Congressman Schreiker's exactly right that the number is irrelevant because there's so much money. It's what's going to be put in place as policy that then has the long-term effect of increasing the role of government in our lives,
and it's not only that. I mean, there's this term called priming the pump, right? Yeah. It's an old economics 101 term. The more money you have in circulation in the economy, the higher that is an inflationary pressure. Yeah. And so if you want to understand why we have so much inflation right now, is that there's a ton of government money in the economy right now, and there is not enough demand.
Right.
And so prices are going up. And it's not transitory. It's here to stay. The president has pretty much shut down our independent oil and gas economy. He's pleading with OPEC to drill. That's not happening. Now he's going back to the oil and gas industry saying, can you help the economy? And there's going to be a cost to that, Joe.
Yeah.
Because you basically shut them down when you came into the office. Right. So there's all these missteps that then lead into where we are right now. And the misstep, going back to Joe Manchin, has been to try to discredit and dismiss Joe Manchin from the beginning versus taking him at his word, which they could have done back in July when he presented Democratic leadership with a smorgasbord of this is what I need to be able to vote for this reconciliation bill, of which Chucky Schumer from New York put that in a drawer. And
with his signature on it.
With the signature on it, and instead pursued a completely different strategy and ignored the senator from
and
West
again,
Virginia.
It's a miscalculation on Schumer's part. Now, I think that the story is written by let me get the name right, David Korn. from Mother Jones. Then
And reported in the Daily Wire and the Daily Caller.
well,
So
yeah, and then
everyone's
this
picked up on it.
morning there was, there was denial by the Manchin team saying, "Oh no, this is outrageous. This is total bullshit."
And those were his words.
And then this afternoon, Manchin's now walked that back and said, "Well, I had talked to leadership that said I would be willing to leave the party if it ever became an embarrassment to them." I mean, he's kind of couching it. The point is, and I think it goes to your point, that someone on Manchin's side did leak this story to boost his leverage. He's already got all the cards. But all of a sudden, the news following that is, oh, we're on the cusp of a deal.
No, I don't think they're on the cusp of
Well,
anything.
Pelosi says they're on the cusp of the deal. Tester says, John Tester, moderate senator from Montana.
Who's on
says,
the block.
Yeah. So it says there's... So the point is that this leak of this story has now, I think, accelerated that this deal needs to get done, because if it doesn't, then Manchin might leave.
Yeah.
And then there is, like you said, there is no deal.
Well, the question becomes, why wouldn't he leave?
Well,
and your point, I believe, going back several months ago was, I think he tries to get as much done as he can within the Democratic Party, tries to pare everything back as much as he can, which I agree with. And then if the Republicans take the Senate, then he switches. Just like Richard Shelby did back in the 90s, and others have.
Phil Gramm. And others.
Yeah, Phil Gramm and others. So then he switches, because then it'll be in a better position.
Because McConnell can offer him all kinds. Now, he could switch now, and McConnell could give him anything
McConnell could still give him anything he wants. And if I were McConnell, I'd be sitting down with him in his boat every weekend saying, what exactly do we need to do?
Right.
He's got a boat in the harbor in D.C., and what hasn't been reported extensively, in these negotiations, is that he's hosting a number of senators every weekend for goodness knows what, but they all go down to the boat and they're all talking strategy as what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what do we need. And most of the Republicans are more worried about taxes, to go back to they're not even talking about Medicare expansion, Medicaid expansion, child care tax rate
and part of it is because if they knock down the tax increases, then there's nothing to pay for the other things. So they get a twofer. Going back to your question about why wouldn't he? So we've seen people do this in the past, switch parties. It's a big deal. I mean, if you are a believer in the philosophies of the party you are a member, it's asking a lot. Now, you can make an argument that the Democratic Party has gone significantly away from where they were when Joe Manchin, was coming up in the Democratic Party. I mean, they're way.
Well,
it's like asking,
where does a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment Democrat, low tax, low regulation Democrat exist in the Democratic Party? I mean,
Joe Manchin,
I guess, and there's probably some in the House.
Your point about pro-life raises another really interesting piece that has not been talked about very much. One of Manchin's demands within this reconciliation is the making sure the Hyde Amendment,
which they stripped,
which
Patty Murray stripped this last,
which is in the budget. And for those that don't know, the Hyde Amendment, which goes back decades, is a provision that goes into every appropriations bill that says no federal funds will be used to provide abortions.
Correct.
And that's gone, and Manchin wants it.
And yet the Congress still allocates $500 million to Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, I mean, there's...
Whose 80% of their business is...
Right. Money is
women's
fungible.
health care,
right,
in that regard.
But the point is that's a big deal for Manchin.
Sure.
And it's obviously a big deal for the pro-life movement. So what's interesting is that this thing could come apart
on the Hyde Amendment.
On the Hyde Amendment.
Well, it's not just Joe Manchin, though. There's probably some other Democrats who don't want that to happen.
Sure.
Both in the House and in the Senate.
Well,
and I would imagine that's true.
I mean, the abortion provision in...
I would imagine even the president, who's been actually rock solid on this issue for several decades.
Well, he supported the Hyde Amendment every time it came up.
As a self-described Catholic, would would like to see that go away. You know, not publicly because he's having to kowtow to his left, but I would imagine that in his heart of hearts, he would want that in there as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right. I think that there's so many. I read this morning that the negotiations are something of a teeter-totter, that it's just a mess. And I think it was in Byron York's actually column this morning from the Washington Examiner, called it a teeter-totter, that it just is all over the place all the time and no consensus building. I think to your point that this was leaked, floated, whatever, to get things moving in the Manchin direction, or else they're going to lose everything.
Yeah.
Harold Ford, former congressman from Tennessee, who I've known for a number of years, he's been very consistent on all the news shows. He's returned to Fox News and CNN, which is great.
And for our listeners, Harold Ford, a Democrat, the son of a longtime Democrat,
and long history in Tennessee. But he has been very consistent as a Democrat, saying, I don't understand why my party won't take the win with infrastructure and live to fight another day on reconciliation, because as it stands now, it doesn't look like it's going to happen with everything they're trying to do. So take the win.
Take the win.
Go back home and say, I got more bridges and whatever else that you got for your community that's in the bill.
Which is substantial. I mean, it's the largest transportation infrastructure deal in a generation.
With only $600 billion going to actual infrastructure. The rest is to questionable items. However, it was supported by 19 Republican senators. It has the votes in the House. It can pass in the House, and it can be sent to the president's desk, and you have the win. You can go out and on a train or a plane or whatever, trains, planes, and automobiles,
right,
and say, look at what we did for the American people. Instead, the left has decided that it all needs to be put in one massive bill together. And I think it collapses on its own weight.
Well, we'll see. So watch this weekend, reconciliation, the infrastructure bill.
Well, the deadline, didn't Nancy Pelosi set a deadline for
October 31st?
Right before Halloween.
Halloween. It's going to be scary.
It is going to be frightening this next week.
Well, we'll be back to report on what happened later on. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for
Have
joining
a great
us.
one.